Hello, everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown, and this is Patron Hangout number 190. Welcome for everybody who is in the chat room. Glad to have you here. And if you'd like to be in the chat room, please do click on the link below. Join Patreon. It's $5 a month. There are 2 live shows a week, the case show on the weekend and a hangout during the week. And of course, if you do not want to join Patreon, I just request that you subscribe to the channel and click the bell. Check my playlist because all of my videos, once the live show is done, become public. So, hello, everybody. Okay, what's up today? First of all, Vallow, not talking about her. Sorry, I know Princess, you really want me to talk about her. Here's a problem I have, and it doesn't mean I'll never talk about her again, so I may look into a little bit of it, but here's the thing. Once I've done a show on it and done all the research and all of that, and then months have gone by, I can't remember crap. So consequently, I would have to review everything, a lot of reviewing. People are seeing the trial. I do not do trial watching. That's not my thing. I don't have time to watch long trials or the interest. I fall asleep. If I don't have to be in the jury box, I don't want to watch the trial. So do I sometimes watch clips of the trial or read information about what happened at the trial? Yes, if I want to talk about something specific. But sometimes when it gets to be kind of like almost a reality show that never ends, it's something I let other people do. And I stick to just analyzing evidence with specific cases and once in a while returning if there's something incredibly interesting that pops up. So I do apologize. Well, that is 100% true. She's a psychopath. And a lot of people ask me, oh, what do you think she is? I've already said she's a psychopath. It's clear she's a psychopath. And I also have said this many times. I'm not as fascinated by psychopathy as many other people are. And I know you think that's weird because I'm a criminal profiler and I have specialties and serial homicides and things like that. But once you've studied psychopathy, you know what it is. You know that it's pretty much the same across the board for all the different psychopaths. They have just different ways of expressing their psychopathy in their crimes and in their daily life. But I'm not fascinated by them. I'm interested in understanding how the evidence supports one particular person and his or her behaviors that I am interested in. So that's just me. All right, but I do want to go to this because let me start. So I know some people in the UK are actually here. It's midnight. This is every other week I do one that's a 7 o'clock show. So in the UK, it's going to be, and in Europe, it's going to be 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning. And the people in Australia and New Zealand are happier because it's their morning, but waking hours, you know. And then the next week I do a show that is 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And so then the people from the UK and Europe happily come, and the people who are from Australia and New Zealand are asleep. But I try to accommodate as much as I can. So anyway, I want to talk about, so I'm going to start with England. And first thing I want to talk about is this annoyance. Not Madeleine herself. Not Madeleine. Madeleine's not annoying. Madeleine is no longer with us, so she can't be annoying to anybody. But the case remains highly annoying. And what is most annoying is that it's getting more money again. Let me see. I'm trying to find where'd it go? Just trying to find them, how much money they're giving now. Once again, for whatever odd reasons. Oh, here we go. Every year, they decide if they should give the Met some more money for a case that is not even in their country. It's a Portuguese case. Why the Met thinks they need to be involved in a Portuguese case for now how many years? 18 years. It's insanity. It says here, but we all should be happy. The Madeleine McCann probe budget is cut. They asked for, let's see, they were tasked to find they're being tasked to find the missing toddler. By whom? They got 84 pounds slashed from the investigation ahead of the 18th anniversary. Oh, ahead of it. Okay. So it says here, they have been granted a further 108 pounds. I wish it was 108 pounds. 108,000 pounds to carry on the search for her. What search? Where? I mean, are you digging up Portugal? Because that's what you need to be doing. If you're not digging up the ground in Portugal, you're wasting your time. And you know that. But somehow you get $100 extra $1,000 every year, I think, for vacations in Portugal. That's it. And I mean, it's a good deal. I take the vacation in Portugal, been there, liked it very much. And so it was a drop of 84,000 pounds over last year. I mean, that's going to make a huge difference, don't you think? So the money was approved earlier this month. We're following a request. They need to stop requesting. It is repugnant at this point. It's been repugnant for a decade at least. So anyway, of course, there's no breakthrough. Oh, what Christian Bruckner in Germany, well, that's all over, because we all knew it wasn't him anyway. But the German prosecutor was trying to, I don't know what he was trying to do, get his day in the sun. Speaking of psychopaths, not saying he's one, but you wonder. So, any rate, one of the issues I have with the funding, and so I'll show a couple things here, by the way. In case you haven't read my book, it's called Profile of the Disappearance of Madeleine McCann. You can get that any place but Amazon, because the McCanns had their attorneys, Carter Ruck, threatened Amazon with a libel lawsuit, and so Amazon pulled it off the market because they didn't want to deal with it. But I also wrote this book. Oh, by the way, this book, it's everywhere but Amazon. It's $2.99. And if you want to hear it for free, you can. You just go on, I'll hopefully link it below. I read the whole book on YouTube, so you can listen to that for free. Now, I wrote another book. It's called 10 Missing and Murdered Children's Cases That Have Nothing to Do with Madeleine McCann. Okay, so now this book is on Amazon. For some reason, the McCanns didn't object to that one. I guess they were past whatever. And I charge a whole 99 cents because you have to charge something on Amazon. You can't give it away for free except for special occasions. So anyway, I wrote that book, and it's been kind of funny because the reviews are interesting on it. Now I've had how many reviews? 300 some reviews. Okay. And the reviews generally are the people who know what I was talking about and know the case. 5 stars, 5 stars. This book matters. 5 stars. A crushing reminder of how Madeleine has been cynically used to dominate the news for a decade. 5 stars. Straight talk. 5 stars. Very refreshing and appropriate. 1 star. It says, not interesting at all. Thank God it was short. It's a miracle I actually got through it. It's all about Madeleine McCann. And so the 1 stars, which are usually McCann supporters, don't get the point of the book. And they're like, well, every chapter, she mentions a case in the UK, but then she talks about Madeleine McCann. Every single chapter, she talks about Madeleine McCann. That was the point. That was the joke of the book. There were 10 missing murdered children's cases I talked about that had nothing to do with Madeleine McCann. But hey, you still hear more about Madeleine McCann than those 10 cases. And that was my point on different issues. How much money was given, how much publicity was given. So this one got this much money, but Madeleine McCann got this much. This one got this much publicity, but Madeleine McCann got this much. So if it was irony, but some people didn't get it or didn't want to get it. But most people who understand what's going on with the case understood it. So that's the problem. Why the heck? Every year, a case that's not even a UK case gets given this massive amount of money. And I would like to say, if every child that's missing or murdered, that's an unsolved case in the UK, why don't they get exactly the same amount of money? Especially since most of those cases probably don't have the parents as number 1 suspects. Why the heck does this, even if the parents weren't suspected by some of us to be involved, even then, why just this one case? What about all the other children? That is so unfair and ridiculous and outrageous. I don't understand why we don't see more missing children's groups, murdered children's groups in the UK just going berserk over this. And maybe they just can't get the media to pay any attention because, after all, it's not about Madeleine McCann. Anyway, I'll check your comments on this. Whew. Proportional. Yeah, proportional will be nice. Let's see. Katie Hopkins says the Madeleine McCann case is giving her Epstein vibes. No, has nothing to do with Epstein. It's ridiculous. Why would she say that? That's retarded. It's nothing to do with Epstein. Good God Almighty. They don't understand irony. That is very true. Yeah. Well, the keyboard warriors, everybody has a right to an opinion. And, when people read a book and they spent money on it and they didn't like the book, they a lot of times want to speak out. And it's as an author, it's always painful to read the negative reviews, especially if it's a book you put your heart into. But a lot of times what happens, which is kind of a sad thing too, because Amazon doesn't do anything about it, is that people can hate me for the Madeleine McCann case and go on there and trash my other books. Even if they say, I won't even read this book. They'll even say that. I won't read this book. And then they'll just trash me and give me a 1 star to try to ruin my sales. Probably doesn't help them. Sarcasm is icing on the cake. Let's see. Princess says, okay, no worries about Lori Vallow. It's so complicated. Plus, you already did a long show. Yeah, it's complicated. It's not complicated in the sense that is it really, or is it just that people make it complicated? And that's sometimes what happens when people ask me about certain cases and they think, oh my God, this is, there's so much to talk about. I'm like, really nothing, but she's got just a long history of being a psychopathic, horrible human being. And if you can call her human, and anything in her past, she mowed down that wasn't useful to her. You're either useful or in the way. Lori Vallow found a lot of people were in her way. So, yeah. I'm trying to see here. Are we going to talk about Peaches? Nah. Okay, so Peaches. Okay, I can't get everything into one show. I've got so much to talk about here. I'm really not going to talk about Peaches just because. Okay, Peaches was Long Island. A body of a woman and her baby were found on Long Island, and were finally identified. She'd been there for years, and nobody has identified her. I don't know it took so long because she was, I think, an Army veteran. She was a veteran, and she had a peach tattoo, and nobody knew who the heck she was. And she had a baby, nobody knew who she was. That's more interesting to me than the fact that they identified her. That's why they didn't identify her way back. That's just weird. But anyway, I haven't gone into depth on that yet, so I may talk about it next week. So far, just that's all they know so far. So she's been identified, and I haven't seen any information on where she lived, where she might have worked, whether she worked on the street or whether she worked, wasn't involved in prostitution, whether she had any connections to any certain people, don't know yet. And I'm waiting for a little more information on that. So yeah, I just did talk about it, but quickly. So, of course they're saying that because they say it's sensationalism. Yeah, I mean, this is a problem I have with certain channels. They jump on any news and just talk about it forever and with no information and make up stuff and make claims. And it's just, we don't know. Was she in the area of the other victims? Yes. But there have been more than one person sometimes dumping a body in a remote place. Now, could she be? Sure. But we just don't know. Just like the woman who that started this whole thing. I'm blanking on her name. Tell me. The one who was at the house and then ran out of the house and ended up dead. I believe that was an accidental death. I do not believe it had anything to do with the Long Island serial killer. I just think that she was psychotic at the moment. So, but people will refuse to go there. They have to make it linked because that's just what they want to do. So anyway, Chris came back. I thought you were sleeping, Chris. Hi, Lex. Okay. The next thing from the UK. So then you can all go to sleep. I'll finish my UK cases. This guy, he's back. Jeremy Bamber, he returns after 40 years. He's been, what is it? This was 25 years after he was arrested, but now 40 years later, he says, the defense team says, yes, we finally got evidence absolutely to prove that he's innocent. Okay. Or maybe not innocent, but maybe, he shouldn't have been found guilty. So let me find out on him. Okay, Jeremy, there you are. So an unsafe conviction, which is what you all call it in the UK. I like that term way better than what we call it. What do we call it? I forgot we call it in the US because I've been using unsafe for a while because I like that better. So anyway, it says Jeremy Bamber receives a boost in his 40-year bid for freedom as whistleblower says police did tamper with the murder scene to frame him for the killings. Okay. So Jeremy Bamber, in case you don't know, this was a house that he wasn't living in, I think, at the time. His parents were there. His sister was there. And her 2 children were there. And everybody ended up dead in the house. And he blamed his sister, said his sister was crazy. And it was a murders and suicide. And she murdered everybody and then shot herself. However, there's a lot of reasons. And hopefully, again, I'll remember the link below. I did a whole analysis of the Bamber case in the UK and the Bain case in New Zealand. 2 guys, I think, are very, very guilty. Bain is out because they did this whole thing and he got this whole fan club. And I think, was it a retrial? I think I found him not guilty, whatever. But anyway, he's free. It's ridiculous because that was a solid case of absolutely was him. I mean, the evidence was overwhelming, actually more overwhelming than Bamber. However, the Bamber case, there was quite enough, in my opinion, to find him guilty without a reasonable doubt. But now they're saying, okay, Jeremy Bamber's 40-year bid to prove he's innocent of the White House farm murders has received a significant boost after bombshell claims by a police whistleblower that officers tampered with the crime scene to place Bamber in the frame for the killings. Let's see, some retired Essex police CID officers broken ranks. Who is he? I would like to know. Because they don't seem to have his name here. So how much rank breaking did he do? After reading Bamber's submissions to the Criminal Cases Reviews Commission, the CCRC, which is deciding whether to refer the case to the Court of Appeal. All right, he's serving a life sentence for the murders of his adoptive parents. And they were 61 years old, his adoptive sister, Sheila, and her 6-year-old twins, Daniel and Nicholas. They were all shot at the farmhouse on August 7th, 1985. He says it was his sister, the paranoid schizophrenic, who did all this. And so he got this boost last year when a New Yorker magazine highlighted more than a dozen apparent discrepancies because a New Yorker, there are people you can trust. The submissions, which are under review, include evidence from one of the world's leading ballistics experts who says the jury may, they didn't have quotes, I'm quoting, may, putting quotes on, have been misled because Essex police, quote, again, their quotes, changed the evidence by moving Neville Bamber's body before the crime scene photos were taken. And let's see, they disturbed the murder scene. And then, just trying to see what other nonsense they have in here. Anyway, then and they talk about 10 pieces of evidence that went missing after the trial. I guess because he was found guilty, so who knows, And then there's this thing where they said that there was a thing about the suppressor on the gun, or the silencer, was on the end of a long gun, and if the sister had killed herself, she couldn't have held the gun with that silencer on it and killed herself. So supposedly they did some mucky thing with the silencer and taping things. And I don't even want to get into it because it's all stupid. Okay. Essentially, it's the same thing that always happens years and years later, that people forget stuff. Things are never perfect. People believe that everything should be so absolutely perfectly done, that nobody screws up, that nobody moves something accidentally or doesn't pay attention to doing something. 1985, they were probably not quite as careful as they are today as far as some things go. I mean, I've worked a lot of cases where the crime scene handling is pitiful, truly. I'm like, what the heck? And the photography is awful. I'm like, I have like 10 photos of the entire crime scene. I don't know where anything is. Some of it's really bad. And it isn't bad because anybody was trying to frame anybody. It's just they're not competent sometimes. So what they do is they go back to all these little technicalities and try to take something that they say is, oh, this could be this now. So we're reanalyzing this, and this could be this. And they just try to stir up enough trouble that they can get a new trial, or they can get one of those new methodologies where you just get one person or whatever, just say, we're just going to dump this whole thing. And the evidence is strong against Bamber. So please do watch my video on that, because again, as I just said with a Vallow case, I can't remember. I researched that very heavily when I did it, and I can't remember all the details. But I sure hope he does not get another trial. Because one of the things that happens with a second trial is that people feel sorry for the guy somehow, because they're no longer of that time. And they see this older guy sitting there like this, oh, he'd been in prison for 40 years. Well, his whole family was brutally murdered. That's where he belongs, No death penalty, at least you belong in prison. And he has a fan club. Bamber has a huge fan club. My God. And he says his life hasn't even been bad, because I think he just adores all the attention he gets. So you get a new jury in there. It's always a crapshoot with a jury anyway. The new jury may just feel sorry for him and say, well, maybe this, and now they found this and they found this. I guess it's unsafe. Let him out. So, this Karen Reed trial, I think this new trial in the Karen Reed case, I think the prosecution has really worked hard to get their ducks in a row, way more than the original ducks. I think the defense is in trouble because Karen Reed did that lovely documentary, and they're just using clips off the documentary it was the stupidest thing she could have ever done. I don't know why our defense team even let her do that, but actually they sought to have her in this. I try to, I guess, repair her reputation or image. And nobody liked her. They watched the documentary. They're like, And on top of it, she said things that they can use in court now. She's in a lot of trouble, which is what she should be, because I think she's guilty. Bamber is repulsive. I wonder if he'd act out again. Well, it was a situational crime. He wanted the money and get rid of everybody, and he did. But somebody who would, when it comes down to killing the children, I sort of, like I can say is that he killed the parents. You could say, like the Menendez brothers, my parents were terrible to me. I had a right to kill them. The sister, she's mentally disturbed. She just needs she's all messed up anyway. But the little children, what did they do wrong, So the fact that you could, first of all, kill anybody that wasn't harming you, and secondly, kill children, would put you in as dangerous a psychopathic type of person as you could possibly be. Serial killers, the same thing. Extremely dangerous. Now, even one-time circumstantial people like Scott Peterson, would he ever kill again? The majority of the time, the answer is no. First of all, because it was situational. He got tired of being married and didn't want to have a baby. So he might avoid putting himself in a situation that would be troublesome again. And then again, and also possibly he's already been to prison. He doesn't want to go back. So that might stop him from doing it. Not that he minds killing, but he just doesn't want to go to prison again. Now, of course, Drew Peterson was a situational killer, and one of his wives is dead, and the other one is missing. So apparently he just gets annoyed with women. So he's not a serial killer, but he is a double situational killer. So yes, you can be dangerous. And when you get out of prison, you're still, if you were a violent psychopath, you're still a violent psychopath. Just sometimes you don't recommit because the crime isn't one you really want to necessarily, you're not into at that moment, or you don't have a reason, or you're too old and infirm, or whatever the heck it is. But there are people who get out and they're not young and they still kill. So I would say still got to be careful with those suckers. Uh, Maybe I'll be smart enough not to remarry. Yeah. Gosh, yeah. Okay, so that's that one. Now I want to talk this one. This one sort of amused me in a horrible way, but this guy, Jeffrey Ferguson, he just got convicted in court, which is a good place to get convicted in, mind you. Hold on a second. Let me find. Where'd you go, dude? There we go. He was a judge, a California judge. And he was a longtime prosecutor in California. Hold on. It's a terrible website. So anyway, he gets convicted of killing his wife. And this is his wife that he killed, Cheryl. And here he is hugging his son after he gets convicted, saying, I'll be okay, son. I'll be okay. Now, the weird thing about this case is, oh, do they have to do that? Sorry. They put like an advertisement right over the thing, and there's no way to get rid of it because if you click on it, it goes to that advertisement. Why would they do that so you can't read? Anyway, just annoying. Okay. Jurors convicted a South California judge of second-degree murder on Tuesday for fatally shooting his wife while the couple argued and watched television at home. So this happened in 2023. Now, the judge is 74 years old now. There goes to show that you could still kill in your 70s. And Cheryl was 65. And they had money, a nice home in Anaheim Hills. Ferguson took the stand in his own defense, admitting to shooting his wife, but saying it was an accident. Okay. But they found him guilty. Now, what happened? Afterwards, he hugged his son, yes, taken into custody. Now, let's hear about the accidental shooting of wifey. Okay. I'm waiting for it to load, please. Was that a picture that's up there that's in my way? I think I might have to go to my phone because it's being very obnoxious. Okay, hold on. Sometimes the iPhone works better. So I'm sure I can find it on here. Oh, here we go, some more. Okay. So he was found also guilty of a felony gun enhancement. Okay. And faces a maximum prison term of 40 years. Well, I guess he'll be dead in prison. All right. And he said, the attorney said this, his attorney, I respect the jury's verdict. At the same time, we all know that juries don't always get it right. Well, that's true. But they got it right this time. And he says, I still believe in Jeff. Mm-hmm. Okay, sure. Well, let's see. I'm trying to get to the point that shows what happened here. I'm going to look here. Okay. All right. So this is supposedly what happened. He had been drinking. They had an argument about family finances, and he made a gun-like hand gesture toward his wife. Huh? Okay. They're watching Breaking Bad on TV, and she this is the stupidest. This is why I have to read this one. It's so stupid. And this is what he says. The son was there too. So the son was in the room too. Daddy, mommy, and the son. Cheryl Ferguson chided her husband to point a real gun at her, as we all do. It's like, honey, can you point a real gun at me? What kind of defense is that? He did. Oh, okay, sure, hon. And then he pulled the trigger. But Ferguson testified he was removing the gun from his ankle holster to place it on a table and fumbled it, and it discharged. So he's pulling it out. It's Immediately after the shooting, Ferguson and his son both called 911, and Ferguson texted his court clerk and bailiff saying, I just lost it. Now, he didn't say there's been an accident. He said, I just lost it. That indicates that he shot her on purpose. I just lost it. I just shot my wife. I won't be in tomorrow. No kidding, dude. I will be in custody. I'm so sorry. So anyway, his son testified in court to tackling his father to wrestle the gun away after the shooting. So if he's pulling this lightly out of his thing and he lost this somehow, I think he said that his whole story is just like it fumbled it and he accidentally shot her. But the son has to wrestle the gun away from him, so that doesn't work so well. And then after the shooting, he performed CPR on his mother. Ferguson spoke with police outside his home, and again, once he was in custody, and was seen on the video sobbing and saying his son and everyone would hate him. In the video, he said he killed his wife and pleaded for a jury to convict him. And what is his attorney trying to say? Yes, everybody probably should hate you, and your son should hate you, although somehow your son doesn't. So, yeah. Maybe because his son's lost his mom and dad's the only thing left. I don't know. They also found 47 weapons in his home, including the gun used in the shooting, and more than 26,000 rounds of ammunition at the home. 26,000 rounds of ammunition. And said Ferguson had ample experience and training in firearms. So this is absolutely true. This was not an accident. Ferguson was trained to never point a gun at anything he didn't intend to destroy. I went through Asad Ayoub's week-long training, top firearms trainer in the U.S., police trainer. And that one thing he must have said over and over, like all day long for 5 days, was you never point the gun at anything you don't want to see dead or willing to pull the trigger on, because never do that. So he knew that. And yet he pointed the gun at his wife because she asked him to, and shot her. Yep, he's where he needs to be. So 26,000 around, rookie numbers. Rookie numbers. Oh my God. I dare you to choose one of the 47 guns and point it at me. Well, honey, I got this one right here. Yeah. It's just sad. I mean, it's ridiculous. And clearly, he was probably inebriated and in an argument with his wife, and probably waved the gun around, like, oh, I should shoot you. And he did, that kind of thing. Well, your wife is dead. You need to go to prison. Yes, one of you is getting the worst deal, and I think it's your wife. So I thought I heard the feral cat come in. Feral cat has not arrived. But I thought that was just a really interesting one. Okay, let's go to, I so hate to go there because it's annoying. But I do have something to say. So where'd it go? Where is that creep? Oh, creepo. Where is it? Okay, have I lost him? Okay, oh, there he is. There he goes. Oh, yeah, there he is. Okay, Harvey. So Harvey is going for a second trial now because the first trial got overturned and he got an appeal. And what I think is interesting is, I'm going to mention a bunch of stuff, but the first thing I want to mention is, hold on. Here we go. Yeah, that's not it. Oh, okay. This is it. Okay. All right. So, okay. So New York's highest court on Thursday, this was back in, they threw out his 2020 rape conviction. This is in April 20. That doesn't make sense. It's been updated. When was the original? 20. Well, anyway, they overturned. The judge, the highest court, threw out Harvey Weinstein's, how do you say his name? Weinstein or Weinstein? I just don't know. I'm going to call him Harvey. See, I don't listen to television very much. So, 2020 rape conviction with a ruling that shocked and disappointed women who celebrated historic gains during the #MeToo era and left those who testified in the case bracing for a retrial against the ex-movie mogul. All right. The court found the trial judge unfairly allowed testimony against him based on allegations that weren't part of the case. He was 72 years old. He remained in prison because he was convicted of another case, a 2022 of another rape. So now, what I thought was interesting was the Me Too advocates noted that Thursday's ruling was based on legal technicalities and not an exoneration of his behavior. saying the original trial irrevocably moved the cultural needle on attitudes about sexual assault. They're pissed off because a technicality got him off. But the Innocence Project, who so many of the same people support, don't have any issues with technicalities getting out guilty people. I just thought that was kind of interesting. Then in a stinging dissent, Judge Madeleine McCann wrote that the Court of Appeals was continuing, quote, a disturbing trend of overturning juries. Hello, haven't I been saying that all over the place? That you got these little new prosecutors roll in for political reasons and just toss cases out. Governors toss cases out. They don't care if the jury found the person guilty. They toss them out all the time. But you never care about that. You only care if it's about sexual assault, which is interesting. Murder, not so big a deal. Bad behavior, depending on how bad the behavior is, when it comes to women, she's bothered by it. She said the ruling came at the expense and safety of women. And of course, we're talking about deeply patriarchal and misogynist legal traditions, blah, blah, blah. Okay, now, I want to read, I pretty much, if you know me, I am bothered by a lot of the Me Too movement, not because I want women to be molested and assaulted and have no recourse, but I do believe in a proper methodology, and the proper methodology is going to the police and filing a report. Now, I know a lot of people say, oh, people are too embarrassed or they're too ashamed or whatever. They think they won't be believed. I get all that. But if you do not follow a legal procedure and at least file right away so that at least the report can be taken and any evidence can be gotten and there can be witnesses and all the things on both sides, whether the person committed what they were accused of or whether they didn't, you have an ability. Now, sometimes do the police poo-poo it and don't do much with it? Sure, but at least the report will be there. Should women do that to protect other women? Yes. If you are going to be sexually assaulted, you, in my opinion, have a duty to other women to report that immediately and not come back 20 years later. Because your failure to do anything allows that guy that you say is horrible to go out and do it to other women because you didn't say anything. So I have an issue with this. So in a way, you're helping that. You're like an accomplice to saying, okay, let him go and do other women. But somehow this whole thing is not like this. So what happens is, especially in Hollywood now, we have women coming out and saying, this guy did this to me 10, 15, 20 years ago. And because of the way it's also handled, which is problematic, is that the attorney for the women will go and make this public, enough information made public that other women who have ever been in the presence of that accused can say, me too, literally, in that way. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I was also in his hotel room. So me too. Or I met him on that day. Nobody's going to remember whether I went with him or didn't go with him. So me too. And I'll also try to remember to link below my thing about being in bed with Tommy Chung when I was in Hollywood. And I wrote this thing up about how I was sexually assaulted by Tommy Chung. Believe me, Tommy Chung did not assault me. The whole thing was to show how I could write something believable. And people came in and said, oh my God, poor Pat, I'm so sorry that happened to you. I'm like, no, it didn't happen to me. I even put a disclaimer on it. It didn't happen to me. But I'm saying how easy it is because I was in a bed on the set, under the covers with Tommy Chung. His hands could have gone where I said his hands went. And he wouldn't have no way to defend himself because I bring it up 20 years later. So I have an issue with this. And I spent a year in Hollywood. And so I understand a lot of what goes on in Hollywood. Now, Harvey is pretty much of a scumbag. Did he use the casting couch? I'm going to say he used the casting couch a lot. And do I think the casting couch is a good thing? No. I had to deal with the casting couch the whole time I was out there. And I refused to cooperate. I did not sleep with anybody out there to get the jobs. Guess what? I didn't get any jobs. I had a choice to prostitute myself or not. I chose not to. And I knew other girls who did. And they're like, oh gosh, I got this, the speaking part. And because you just slept with a producer or you just slept with the main or whatever, you slept with somebody or everybody, as the case may be. They knew that's what they had to do to get ahead in the Hollywood world. Is it right? No. But if there are tons of women willing to do that, the casting couch continues. So you have to stand up against it and be willing to not get ahead, shall we say. It's not right. But unless everybody speaks out against it, that keeps going. Now, mind you, the Me Too thing may have that effect, because now I would say this, a lot of these guys who used the casting couch before or would think about using a casting couch might be scared crapless, because, hey, if I have any woman near any woman who's a wannabe actress to my hotel room, even consensually, she'll come back in 5 years and claim I raped her. So maybe that will slow that down. So maybe it'll have some residual good effects. But do I think I have issues with anybody being put on trial for things that are claims made years and years later? Now, having said that, I want to read this thing about Harvey. And this was the thing that did him in court, which was the one accuser got with the police and actually, I guess, wore a mic and got him to say stuff. Okay. Let me find it. Now, mind you, by the way, I think the majority of I can't go back to all the claims, but a lot of them the claim is that he forced oral sex on the women. Now, I think there was one claim of rape, I'm trying to remember, and one claim of forcing her to do it to him, but also claims that he did it to them. And so that's considered forcible if you don't say, I want you to do it. So, but it's interesting because back in the old days, if a guy did that, woman's like, well, that's a good deal. A lot of times, she's like, oh, well, I don't have to do anything. He's doing nice things for me, pleasuring me, But of course, if she doesn't want it, it's disgusting and grotesque, right? It's like, get out of my legs, But the question is, well, how did he get there? And that's one of the problems. How did he get there? And again, I will say this. He doesn't have the right to do it if the woman doesn't want him to do it. That is clearly a sexual assault. I'm not saying that. But the problem I have is that we as women, first of all, we should report sexual assaults to the police right away. And okay, now I want to read this transcript. I thought this was interesting. Full transcript of the horrifying exchange with Bamber Gutierrez. And this is one thing that did him in. Now, so he says, okay, he was harassing a model in a New York hotel. And this was released, this tape. In the recording, he appears to confess to groping model, appears to confess. He does appear to confess. Groping model Bamber Gutierrez as she repeatedly rebuffs his request to join him in his hotel room. Here's a full transcript. Harvey, I'm telling you right now, get in here. And she goes, what do we have to do here? He says, nothing. I'm going to take a shower. You sit there and have a drink. She says, I don't drink. He says, then have a glass of water. She said, can I stay on the bar? On the bar? At the bar. No, you must come here now. No, please. I don't want to. Harvey, I'm not doing anything to you. I promise. Now you're embarrassing me. She says, I know. I don't want to. I'm sorry. I cannot. He says, no, come in here. She says, no, yesterday was kind of aggressive for me. He says, I know. He says, I need to know a person to be touched. I won't do a thing. I don't want to be touched. I won't do a thing. Please. I swear I won't. Just sit with me. Don't embarrass me in the hotel. I'm here all the time. Sit with me. I promise. I know, but I don't want to. I want to stop here. How many times you have to tell this guy you don't want to? There's a thing called walk away. You don't want to walk away. Why is she staying? When a guy is treating her like this and is crude and obnoxious and pushing her, why does she walk away? It's because she's still trying to be on good terms with him for purposes probably of career. And then he says, please sit here. Please, 1 minute, I ask you. No, I can't. Go to the bathroom. Please, I don't want to do something I don't want to. He said, go to the bathroom. I don't know why I said, here, come here, listen to me. I want to go downstairs. I don't know. Is she in his room already? I can't quite figure that out. But don't go to a private room, a hotel room with someone you don't want to sleep with. I don't know how many times we have to say this. You don't go to a sports star's hotel room. For what? To have tea? No, you have tea downstairs. You go to his room. The assumption is you want to come here to have sex with me. Most of the time it's true. Musicians, that's why they always got the groupies going to the hotel rooms and they get sex. So you don't go to somebody's hotel room at all. And I don't care. People say, oh, even if she goes to a hotel room, this shouldn't happen. Stop doing it. Women, you have to be responsible for yourself. And you have to teach your daughters, you don't do this kind of thing. I didn't go to anybody's hotel room when I was in Hollywood. I didn't go home with them and go into their bedroom. Didn't even go home with them. But, and he says, she says, I just don't feel uncomfortable. Still going on. Honey, don't have a fight with me in the hallway. Now they're in the hallway. It's not nothing. It's please, I'm not going to do anything. I swear on my children, please come in. On everything, I'm a famous guy. Now, first of all, I don't know how drunk this guy is. That's something to just point out. He maybe have had a lot of alcohol, so he's a total asshole. She says, I'm feeling very uncomfortable. How many times do you have to say this over and over again? Then he says, please come in 1 minute. If you want to leave, when the guy comes in my jacket, you can go. Now, what? And she said, this is where he got nailed. Why yesterday you touched my breast? And he said, oh, please, I'm sorry. Just come on in. I'm used to it. You're used to that? Yes, come on in. She says, but I'm not used to it. Well, I won't do it again. Come on and sit down. Sit down for a minute, please. All right. The touched breast thing. I just want to point this out. In many, many circumstances where there's flirting and cuddling and kissing and hugging and all that stuff, a guy's hand has ended up on a woman's boob. It didn't used to be considered sexual assault. It used to be considered foreplay, and it used to be considered like, don't be a creep. One of those two, because either you're going forward with it and you're interested in it, or you're like, don't do that. And you push the guy away and said no, and you got out of there. But she comes back for more. She already supposedly totally uncomfortable that he touched her breast, and yet she hooks up with him again and gets in a private situation where the two of them are together, being able to have this long conversation where he's begging her because he obviously wants to have sex with her, and she's trying to say, no, I don't want to do it. Walk away. And you should never have come back. If he touched you inappropriately, would you consider it inappropriate? I don't know how inappropriate it was. He did apologize for it, but maybe they were drinking and he did touch her, and she's like, hey, I don't want you to do that. And he's like, sorry. He didn't consider it like a crime. He just considered it what guys do. I'm not saying you can argue this into the hills, come home, But the point being that this was something that did him in because it made him look like a sleazebag. Yeah, he is a sleazebag. He's a total sleaze. He's also a very powerful man, and he can get people big careers. If I had been around Harvey, which I was not, I would have walked away because I would have said, well, I'm not doing that to get a career going. But a lot of women did, and they went into hotel rooms with him. And it's once they walk in that hotel room, it is a he said, she said. I don't care how many she said it. Same thing with Bill Cosby. I don't care how many women said he did stuff because they all went to his house to be alone with him, knowing they would have sex with him. That's just a given. That's just a given. Was he being a sleazebag? Yes. A horn dog? Yes. Was he a rapist? I don't think the proof was there. And I'm not sure even with this creep, the proof is there either. So there's issues with the whole way this is done. And I want to say that there are people who have been accused. I mean, if they're sleazebags, is that the same? Do they deserve a 20-year prison sentence for being a sleazebag? Now, some people think that, yeah, they should be. They should get a 20-year. But I've seen these kind of claims be made against was a football player one time. A woman claimed he did that. He got thrown off the team. And then it turned out she was lying, and they had proof she was lying. The guy lost his whole college career and everything and I'm always scared for my sons. It's like, you better be careful because these girls can come back a year or two later and said you did things to them and it wasn't consensual, and you can't prove it. On the other hand, ladies, the date rape stuff, when you go with a guy to his place and he does actually rape you, you can't prove that either. So you set yourself up for being, unfortunately, sexually assaulted. And I just think we all need to do something better about our behaviors. And we all need to go, if it really did happen and you can prove it, go to the police, even if it turns out it doesn't, you can't, they can't go after them. It will be on record. So here's the thing. If you have the defense attorney go public, right? And she tells what's happened, all these girls say things, all these other girls can just jump on the story. But here's what the difference is. You go to the police right away and you say, this is exactly what he did to me. And it ends up just being in a report, but no further. 2 years later, another woman comes in to report that something happened to her, and she reports exactly the same thing as you reported. Now you have confirmation. That is actual proof. Even if you can't prove each one separately at that point in time enough to go to court, there's 2 women who the proof actually matches that they didn't hear from some other source, So I just feel very strongly that women, one, you have to report to save other women so they don't have to be part of the Me Too's. And 2, stop prostituting yourself and stop going with these guys to places because you want to you prostitute yourself to get ahead. That's 2. And 3, if a guy does make a pass at you in a way that you're uncomfortable with, get the heck out of there right away. Stop playing these games. Stop coming back to see him again. So a lot of these girls who've complained have continued to have a relationship with the guy who supposedly sexually assaulted them. Why? Probably because they still want to get ahead in the world. So, if the women really want to protect each other, do the right thing. Do the right thing. And this is just, so I don't know to believe these women or not. I think he's a sleazebag. I think I definitely believe he used the casting couch repeatedly. And the whole person has power, therefore it's equivalent to rape. No, it's not. No, it's not. Unless you truly are being physically threatened. You're afraid for your life. You're afraid you're going to be harmed, not socially, and not losing your job or not getting a job. But if you think you're going to be physically harmed, that is self-defense. If the guy attacks you, then, if you don't fight back because you think you're going to be harmed, that's actually self-defense. I don't have a problem with that. But if the reason you went ahead and let him do it is because you wanted to get a part in the movie, sorry. I don't consider that rape just because he was powerful and you were not. You still made a choice. And sometimes you lose. I went to Hollywood and I didn't get a career in Hollywood because I refused to do those things. So should I have gone ahead and done them and then whined later on that these guys were powerful and I had sex with them and then I didn't get the part anyway? Sour grapes. So I just have an issue with the whole methodology here. Then not defending Harvey at all because he's a creep. 100% a creep. But I just don't know whether some of this stuff adds up to what they say it adds up to, and that there's enough proof for any kind of long sentencing because you get a whole bunch of women together to tell stories. I mean, it just bothers me that the way it's done. That's my problem with it. Let's see. I'm not going to, there's a truth to this. Okay. So the comment, I'm actually not going to put your name on the screen right now. But this person may not want me to, but the issue of women getting really drunk and then not knowing whether you said yes or no. I know, maybe I don't know if I was raped because I can't remember if I said yes. Actually, there's a truth to that. And oddly, sometimes the guy doesn't know what he did either. So this is where it gets all very confusing. And I know essentially sometimes you just have to say, well, if I got that drunk where I laid down with this guy and ended up having sex and I didn't even remember saying yes or whatever. And I just sort of let him do it. That's not necessarily sexual assault, or maybe you shouldn't get that trash drunk with and hang out and lay down with some guy you don't know. You know what I mean? Is he right? No. If he did something because you didn't say yes, No, but back in the day too, you didn't have to say yes. Is it okay if I kiss you? Is it okay if I touch you? Is it okay if I do this? You didn't have to usually go through that whole rigmarole. So usually the concept was if two people were laying in bed together or on a couch together, having half naked and drunk and kissing and all that kind of stuff, unless the woman literally starts screaming and fighting, the guy may just think she's into it, even if she's like half out of it, Now, if you're totally asleep, like unconscious, that's kind of absolute. But just say these things get very, very blurry. And I just want to see people, maybe we all have to act better and stand up better, especially for other women. Just, sorry, I don't know why I went on that soapbox, but it annoys me. Oh God, not peppermint schnapps. I did get I've gotten rarely drunk in my life, but I was in Denmark and I got drunk on schnapps for sure. Stuff is bad. Oh, so Frida says, I agree with Pat that often sex is transactional in Hollywood. It is. Perhaps people rescript it in their minds later as they regret taking the deal. That's an excellent statement. Yeah. And how we see what happened, how much we feel that they were responsible, we weren't responsible. What were we doing to say it was okay? I mean, like if the guy's in between your legs and trying to pleasure you, how did he get there? What were you wearing at the time before he got there? Did you say really truly object, or did you go, oh, he's going to do that? Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know. The thing is, yes, rescripting is often happens, and again, we're talking about one of the things I point out over and over again is that a lot of times people drink and take drugs, and I saw it at the parties I went to in Hollywood. They drink and take drugs, the girls, because they know they're going to sleep with somebody that night. They're going to have sex with somebody they hope is going to influence a career. And if it's an older guy that they weren't attracted to, or some fat guy, whatever it is, that they really aren't attracted to, they drink and do drugs like Quaaludes, very popular. That's why Bill Cosby said, want a Quaalude? And the woman's like, yeah, I'm going to have sex with you. So, and therefore then you get all happy and high and you just go ahead and have sex with them. And it isn't that unpleasant an experience because you're high, right? And you can live with it. So there you go. So then, did he rape the woman because he offered drugs and she took them? So yes, we have a lot of rescripting that goes on. I've seen it in Hollywood. People who haven't been in Hollywood don't understand how that actually works. And it's not. It's a kind of a despicable atmosphere. The whole atmosphere is despicable. And I didn't get anywhere because I didn't do anything to get somewhere. And I finally said, well, I just got to get out of here, and I did. And I left Hollywood and I gave up being that I was ever going to be on TV. I wasn't ever going to be, get that opportunity to be on TV. And then in my 40s, I ended up on TV. It's like, it was kind of funny. I'm like, now I end up on TV. Or completely, I was 19 when I was in Hollywood. And I started TV when I was 45. So I ended up there, and I didn't sleep with anybody because I don't have to do it. So, oh my God. All right, I got to get off this subject because it annoys the hell out of me. Another really kind of frustrating case right now that's in the news is Carmelo Anthony, who stabbed another young man in the chest at a football game. And this whole thing has turned into some really bizarre, this is it. I think this is mom and there's two guys who are out there speaking for Karmelo. What is his name again? Karmelo. Anyway, they're saying this. It is both heartbreaking and infuriating to see the depths of hate and bigotry still alive and well in our society. No family should have to live under siege simply because they are demanding their constitutional rights. We will not be silent. We will not back down. Now, they're saying that Karmelo is being unfairly treated, and he has constitutional rights to go to trial. No, that is true, but they're making this out to be a racial issue, which that people are being mean to him. No, people are being mean to him because he stabbed a young man on the chest and killed him. That's why people are upset, and they're upset because Karmelo seems to be lying about the circumstances which happened and bringing up all kinds of stuff that's nonsense. And so, Now, he does deserve to go to court and all of this stuff. But first of all, let me hold on a second here. I want to point out there's a lot. Okay, I want to read this one because this is really good. The claim was, by the way, so if anybody doesn't know this case, so Karmelo went to this location where there was a tent for a team, and he went in the tent. It was not his team. He had no reason to be in the tent. And they asked him to leave because it's a team gathering, So like I said, for example, let's say I'm at a soccer game and there's, one group over here working on their plan for soccer and this group over here. And I'm not with that team, but I barge in and I sit around with them and they're like, what are you doing here? You're not with the team. Can you please? Hello, cat. The cat has arrived. Hello, kitty. You want one? Hold on a second. No. You want one of these? You want one of these? Come on. You want it? No, it's fancy. You want the fancy thing or not? No? Okay, it's up here. I know it's going to leave. Anyway, it's the feral cat. Has had his dinner. And I had some treats for him, but he'll come back later for him. Anyway, so in other words, Karmelo went into a tent, which he was not involved with those people, that group of people. He shouldn't have been in the tent. Not because, and some people say, well, he had every right. He had every right to the public location. No, but it was a tent set up for the team, and he went into another team's tent, and they asked him to leave, which they had every right to do. And then the claim is that the guy, Austin Metcalf, he's the guy that got stabbed to death. They're claiming that Karmelo did not initiate the confrontation, that Austin Metcalf and his much larger brother approached Karmelo in an overtly aggressive manner. And under Texas Penal Code, Karmelo had the right to defend himself and approach and physically threatened by Metcalf and his brother. The law clearly states that self-defense is justified when an individual is not the aggressor. The two men, not one, which is also crucial, and this I've seen both about, there was just one of them, and then his brother was there just sitting there, I don't know, took it upon themselves to approach him, making physical contact with him, and then threaten him. Karmelo was simply reacting to an escalating situation that was thrust upon him. The lack of provocation is crucial. Okay, so apparently, according to everybody else, that's bullcrap, that what happened was they, so essentially what supposedly happened is he came in, he was asked to leave, and Karmelo said to Austin, touch me and, you're going to get it, essentially. And I don't know exactly what happened there, but nobody else had any weapons. And he chose to go into a location where he wasn't supposed to be. He was asked to leave. He did not leave. And when they came up to him, he said, you touch me, I'm going to do this to you. And I don't know, they said, hey, come on, guy. And he, at that point in time, when he said, don't touch me or I'll do things, you're going to regret it, essentially. He had every opportunity to simply walk out. He did not walk out. Instead, when he was touched, he pulled out a knife and stabbed the guy in the chest, and he died. And he is being, now it's being stated now, because this is the victim, and this is the guy who killed him. There's no question that he killed him and that he was a victim. However, now some people will say it's because the killer, the guy who killed him, was black, and it was a racial thing because the guy was white. I don't know that that's true at all. It could just be a guy thing. Hey, I'm a guy, you're a guy, you can't. That could be just that simple. So I'm not going to go, I don't go with any racial thing there because I don't hear anything racial said. Likewise, after Karmelo stabbed Austin to death and killed him, because people are upset about it, doesn't mean that they're being racist against Karmelo. That's just nonsense. So they're turning his defense team has got this huge GoFundMe, and all these people are putting money into to save Karmelo from the racists is absolutely ludicrous. So this guy just said, I like the way this guy puts it out. He said, this is This is on Reddit, by the way. A guy named Didactyls Listes or something like that. You just made up a whole bunch of lies. He was only approached by one person. You cannot claim self-defense while in the process of committing a crime. First crime is trespassing in another school's tent and asked to leave. And the trespassing is questionable because, again, it was sort of a public location. So I don't know if he was trespassing or just being annoying and shouldn't have been there, but just because it wasn't the group he should have been hanging out with. And they wanted him to leave because that's where that group was hanging out. Second crime is carrying an illegal weapon, which is true. That's a felony. Metcalf's brother never approached him. He was sitting with his friends and only rushed up after his brother was stabbed. The only time you can claim self-defense is if your life is in immediate danger and the other person is brandishing a weapon, or fist can be a weapon. If you're a tiny person and a big, huge person comes at you like this, that can be threatening. And you could view that as, I'm going to get killed. As a female, if a big guy comes up and he's about to punch me in the face, I can assume that I might die from that one punch. And I would have the right to protect myself. That would be self-defense. This guy was not in any trouble, and all he had to do was walk out the door. He was not being blocked. He was not being held. He could have walked out. Instead of walking away, he chose to take out a knife, which was illegal, and stab the guy straight in the chest. That's not self-defense. So I think that Karmelo is guilty of the crime, and I think he's probably going to be found guilty. However, the crap that's being spewed around it is just incredibly sad. So I wanted to read one thing, which I just thought was really interesting. This is written on christianpost.com, apparently by a Black pastor. And I thought what he said was really interesting here. He said, while talking heads obsess over race, they intentionally ignore the uncomfortable question at the heart of this tragedy. Why are so many young Black men conditioned to respond to perceived disrespect with deadly violence? And it's not only Black men, but white men as well. But perceived disrespect. Disrespect is not, I've been disrespected a lot in person, some places. And the response isn't killing. You know, just because I got disrespected, it's either saying something like Patrick Swayze would say in Roadhouse, opinions vary and walk away, or just walk away. You don't have to respond with violence because you're disrespected. He said the standard explanation of fatherlessness doesn't apply here. By all accounts, Carmelo Anthony had an intact family. He wasn't abandoned. He wasn't raised with that structure of guidance. Although I question how his some of his stuff, what's going on with the parents and what they've sort of allowed their son to become. Now, he might be a psychopath, and maybe they've had trouble with him and they're just not admitting it. I don't know. But he said this, yet something went terribly wrong. And that something isn't systemic racism or white supremacy. It is a poisonous cultural definition of Black manhood that has affected our communities like a virus. I think it's interesting. This is coming from a Black man. So, and again, this is not a political channel, so I'm not trying to make it out to be any kind of race thing here. But I wanted to point this out. I just want you to know what this guy's saying. Mainstream rap and hip hop culture often glorify a distorted version of masculinity, where respect is paramount and violence is a default response to disrespect. Now, a lot of people are saying this is happening, okay, say across all races, that young men are being taught to have this behavior. Young men consuming this media receive constant messaging that real men respond to challenges with aggression, that backing down equals weakness, and that respect must be maintained at all costs, even lethal ones. And he's concerned that young Black men are being discipled today, not by churches, not by scripture, but by a culture that preaches a false gospel about what it means to be authentically Black. Never show weakness, never walk away from disrespect, retaliate when challenged, prove you won't be punked, value pride over peace. And I think this is true. And as I say, not only true in the Black community, but just in many communities. All right. This is the one thing I want you to hear. Anthony's social media posts, now removed, illustrated this distorted image, the tough poses, the aggressive posturing, the constant performance of a cultural script that says manhood equals dominance. So we've often seen when a person commits a violent crime, you often see them posing in violent kind of like the rap stuff, you're posing with the guns, you're posing with the money, all fanned out, you're doing something. And it shows this aggression and this interest in guns and violence and whatever. So whether it be a knife or whether it be a gun or whether it be fists, whatever it is, this is a problem we're having in our society, that young men are growing up with a kind of a strange concept. And of course, I pointed out with the move, was it Adolescence? Is that the name of it? Adolescence? Like the UK series, a four-part series. Is that the name of it? Sorry, I'm just blanking here because I did a show on it. So somebody tell me if I got the name right. I'm screwing up. And a lot of people got angry at that because it showed a white kid who committed a knife crime, killing a girl. And it's a fictional story. And they were angry because they wanted this knife issue to be race related. But I'm like, hey, this kind of stuff is going on with adolescents, period. It is adolescence. Okay. It's happening with adolescents, period. It's happening in our schools. The violence is increased in our schools rapidly. It's increased on the streets. It's increased and just increased. So we have a problem with our youth, that they're not getting the kind of upbringing that would be beneficial to them growing up, not to be violent and not to be angry and not to protect their manhood or, by stabbing somebody or killing somebody. Also for females, it's not, some of the stuff females do is pretty appalling as well. So it's not just about men, it's about women too, girls and boys and all races. So we have kind of a virus going on in our society. So I kind of like what this guy had to say. It was nice that he wants to bring a sense of, parents need to be responsible for what their children are doing. They cannot just be on social media, just taking in everything that's out there. You should have responsibility to make sure your children aren't watching things that are detrimental to them. And when I raised my kids, luckily the internet didn't exist. We had some video games and stuff and TV, but I was a homeschooler, so I had pretty strict control over what I thought they should spend their time with, and whose house they could go to and hang out with. I mean, I thought that was my responsibility as a parent. And I think somewhere along the way, Carmelo Anthony's parents didn't do the right job. And now they're trying to blame everybody else. They're blaming society for racism. They're blaming the victim for annoying their son, causing him to commit this crime. I'm sorry, I'm thinking it goes back to the parents and what you did to raise your son poorly, because what your son did, carrying a weapon onto campus, going into a place you shouldn't be, telling the guy, you touch me and I'm going to do something to you, refusing to leave, that's your son's behavior. Where did he learn that from? So anyway, I just want to say on that, I'm not going to go and say it. I'm trying to, it's hard sometimes to talk about certain cases without politics and stuff getting involved in all of it. So it's very frustrating. But and a lot of it's being pushed by the media. I think you might be saying that. That Frida has something good to say here. The more you view the mainstream media as political actors rather than reporters, that is very true. The more the behaviors make sense. Douchebags abound. Yes, and one of the reasons I left mainstream media was I didn't like the fact that they kept they had these agendas, what they wanted to push. And what they wanted to push wasn't necessarily true, but it did get views. So there's people stirring the pot all the time to get views, saying whatever just to get views. And then people watching the media believe they jump on board because it does work. They stirred those people up. Now those people are stirred, And so, I would like to see a return where news was solemn. Remember those days? Well, maybe you don't, unless you're at least as old as me. But, where another person come on and say, today, and there wasn't a lot of, it was just more solemn. And I think it should be that way. There was more decorum. And I think we've lost decorum and that kind of thing. So, and I think it's everything's kind of out of control. It really is. Wait, let's see. I want to see what you have to say here. Texas Reddit. Somebody made a Facebook account, pretended to be the sheriff's office. And put in out false info. Sheriff said when they find the person, they face felony charges for impersonating a law. Oh, that's a law official. That's great. Yeah, because this is so easy to do, and you can once that gets out in public. I don't know if you saw this one. AOC's brother, Cortez, what's her face? AOC. Her brother, who does a bunch of stuff. He says he works for the homeless. He's half deaf, so he's both. He supports like deaf things, and he's gay, so he supports like gay things, and he does all this kind of stuff. And whether you like his stuff or don't like what he does, regardless. Anyway, the report came out on a TikTok channel where he was arrested by the police for being on a boat with I don't know, fentanyl, huge amount of drugs, and she's like, see, oh my God, it's AOC's brother, and it got 500,000 views. This person who has no credibility, she had a picture behind her with the information on. Well, it came from a channel that does satire, but she didn't say. She either was too stupid to realize it was satire, but the channel is known for satire, so it's not like she shouldn't be fooled, or she knew it was satire but didn't care, and she put it out there, and then it spread like wildfire. And now all over the internet, you'll see that her brother is having to deny and threaten to sue because it's everywhere that he was importing drugs across the Canadian border. I mean, this is the kind of nonsense that goes on, and it's very sad. Again, no politics on board. Please do not talk politics. Okay, that wasn't a political thing. I was just talking about how the internet and the media can start up this kind of nonsense. So no politics, please. Okay, let's see. Somebody asked me to. Where is it? Oh, okay, where'd you go? No, that's not it. Oh, here she is. Okay, this is a really sad case, and I kind of relate to it in a way because that could have happened to me. It could have, except I didn't have the fancy home she had. So anyway, she lived in this woman who is, how old is she? 82. Lived in this very, very beautiful $900,000 lake home in Washington State, and she got killed by this creep, Ziz, who was a handyman. And I just want to point out to you that one of the top employment for serial killers is security guard. That's the number one. Why? And when you say where are the statistics, I don't have any. I don't have the energy to do the statistical stuff. But because I've been in this field for over 2 decades, I've seen different things about serial killers and stuff. And one of the popular ones is security guard. Not necessarily the time he committed the crime, but that's a very popular employment. Why? Because some serial killers want to become cops, but they can't pass the psych exam, so they become security guards. And that gives them a uniform and sometimes a gun. Because they sometimes can get that. They don't have a record. They can get their gun, and they get to walk around with a chest, being all security guard guy. Some of them are mall cops, it's just a power thing. They love power and control, and that's one way they can get it. Sometimes they're bouncers in bars, and my son, he was a bouncer in a bar. He's not a serial killer. He's worked in security. Not a serial killer. She's worked in security, not a serial killer. So believe me, now she's a detective now. He works in a completely different field, but he was actually working for NASA and federal security. And he was a bouncer and no longer does that. So, in the younger years. But it's a popular job. Handyman is the second popular job. Why? Well, because, go back to the security. Especially for not a security without a gun, like a mall cop, you have to get people to fill in the time. So basically, if they breathe in and breathe out, they get the job. They don't really care that much about their whole history. It's an easy job to get. Not that many people want it. So if you can breathe, you get the job. Handyman, you don't have to be hired by a company. You can go, put your little information out, and people who need somebody to fix all these little things, hire a handyman. And they often don't know his whole background and all that kind of stuff. And people always say, oh, she should have, they should have checked the background of this guy is better. It's not as easy as you think. Now, in certain places, like in Maryland, we have an online where you can just go and put the person's name in and see if they have a record in Maryland. There's many states you can't go online. You actually literally, when I was doing an investigation of somebody who I believe had a Virginia crimes, I had to go to every courthouse in Virginia to get information on this one person. In person, I had to drive to Arlington County Courthouse, Alexandria Courthouse, all the way down. I knew where he lived. I went all the way down to Richmond, Virginia, going to courthouse after courthouse to get information. It was crazy. So sometimes it's not that easy. You can hire a company, but that costs a lot of money. So, and sometimes you're just like, I gotta get this stuff fixed, man. So this poor woman, they call her a trusting grandma. I wish they'd stop using grandma every time I have an older person. Just annoys me, Grandma is not what she is. She's simply a woman who happens to be 82 years old, and maybe she happens to be a grandma, but that's not the point of the story, so stop saying that. Nail gun horror after trusting grandma, 82 handyman, 47, who had a crush on her into her stunning $900,000 home. Okay, now here's what really happened. She vanished. And her family didn't hear from her for days. And the last thing, they looked at her text messages, and the last one showed she'd been in contact with a handyman. Now, they searched Ziz's house, the guy that killed her, and found a 5-page letter that appeared to be a meticulously planned out burglary / sexual assault of an adult woman identified as customer. This guy is a serial killer, okay? And they make this big deal about him having a crush on her. No, he's a serial killer. His crush was, man, I can kill this woman. It's going to be great. The investigation found Ziz had rented an excavator and a trailer after Norman went missing. They tracked the equipment to a house of a woman who said she had hired Ziz to build a shed on her property. And then they found that Norman's remains were found buried and covered in cement at the property. Black Velcro straps were wrapped around her wrists and ankles, and there was evidence she had been bound prior to her death. Investigators eventually found she died from blunt force trauma and penetrating injuries to the head. The injuries were from a nail gun and occurred over several hours, meaning she was tortured before she died. That was what he was interested in, was the thrill of kill. The thrill of killing. It wasn't he was in love with her. Okay, no, this is the unfortunate thing. She had previously told her family about a disturbing incident when she woke up in the middle of the night to find Ziz standing at the foot of her bed. Now, he had worked around the house for quite a while. And this moment, she found him standing at the end of her bed. She told Ziz that it was inappropriate for him to be there and he needed to leave. She told her son she spoke with him and made it clear that they were to keep a professional relationship and he was not to cross those boundaries again. Lady, those are not boundaries. Oh, poor woman. Those are not boundaries. The guy's a psycho. The fact that he would do that, you want to get him out of there and you want to get protection right away. The police say Ziz admitted to the creepy encounter and stated he had romantic feelings toward the grandmother. I doubt that. He admitted that this happened. He went into Norman's room while she was sleeping and he rubbed her shoulder, wanting to speak with her. He said that she told him to leave and that he did have thoughts about her romantically. However, there was no evidence of sexual assault and they're still looking into a motive. He's a serial killer. That's the motive. He wanted to kill her. And it's unclear if Norman knew her alleged killer had a crush on her. He didn't have a crush on her. He wanted to crush her. Two different things. Now, it's really sad because she had an idea that something was off with this guy. So the reason I say that I relate to that is because I did hire a guy who came out of this Virginia pen. He came to my house to do gutter work, and then he came in and sat down in my kitchen. We were talking, and he said, "What do you do for a living?" I said, "Criminal profiling." He said, "Oh, that's cool, man. I got out of prison." I said, "What were you in for?" He goes, "Murder one." I'm like, "That's nice." So, there he's in my kitchen, and so I guess I did hire him because he was good price, good price. So was it terribly wise? Well, he did know my daughter was a detective as well. He knew I was a criminal profiler. Was it stupid? Maybe. he did all the work around the house. At some point, he did mention maybe somebody else had died, so he might be a serial killer for sure. He definitely was a psychopath. There's no question about it. Good looking dude too. Good looking guy. But no, I didn't. He didn't have a crush on me. Well, he would have slept with me. I'll take that back. At the time, I was younger, way younger, and he would have had sex with me, I'm sure. But no, I did not sleep with the guy. And I had methodologies of making sure that nothing happened. But it's kind of funny because I couldn't find anybody to do handyman work. That was true. And he did the gutters and he did a whole bunch of other stuff around the house that I needed done at a price I could afford. And that, when I say to a lot of people, desperation drives people to take chances, like women who will hook up with a guy that probably is sketchy, but they're lonely, or men hook up a sketchy woman because they're lonely. Desperation will drive people to do that. And my desperation was I needed things fixed and couldn't find anybody to do it that wasn't outrageously priced. But still here, thank God. Oh, no. No, I analyzed them before the date. Maybe that's why I can't get any dates. No. I actually do have people ask me that, though. I say, are you analyzing me? And the answer is no, because generally speaking, it's just people are just people unless something's really obvious, something really, those little red flags pop up. If that happens, then yeah, it's concerning. Tina says, my regular pool guy had my gate 2 yard. And used it one day on his unscheduled day. And I was pissed. They didn't tell me it was coming. I changed the code and he doesn't get in anymore. Yeah, that's a good idea. If he comes when he's not supposed to be there and comes in without your permission, that's concerning. It's unfortunate because, really the problem is a lot of people are handymen. My daughter's father-in-law is a handyman. He's worked in construction before, had his own company and everything. And, he can do all kinds of things, fix bathrooms and put in decks and do all kinds of stuff. And he's, of course, not a serial killer. But so it's not like I don't know people who are handymen and security guards and everything else. But the problem is because those jobs can easily attract people who do not have a safe background, who do have criminal backgrounds, and they can wander through neighborhoods and put up little signs. And if you can't get anybody to work, you got to grab what you can. So same thing is true for renting rooms in houses, because there have been landladies and landlords who've been killed. I just did that one last week, I think it was, where the guy rented the room to this other fellow and the guy brutally murdered him just for the fun of it. And I've rented rooms. I rented rooms for 20, over 20, it might be 30 years. I rented rooms in my house. And a couple issues during those years. Why did I do it? Because I couldn't afford to stay home with my kids without renting rooms. I rented them to students for the most part. Students from China, they were pretty good. After the kids were grown, in order to keep up the mortgage as a divorced person, I still rented rooms because I didn't have that much money. So sometimes you do what you got to do. And people say, how did you check out the people? So you know how hard it is to check out anybody who wants to rent a room in your house? Very difficult. Very difficult. So sometimes you just went with what they told you. Like if they said, I've been sleeping in my car, you probably say no. If they say, I can move in as soon as I get some money off my brother, no. There's things, you can do to try to make sure you get the safest people. But if you got to survive, you got to survive. That's why women who end up working like a job in the city, they're working in a job at night, and they have to walk home from the bus stop, and they get killed between the bus stop and their apartment. And people say, well, they shouldn't have been out there at night. Well, that's when they could get their job. They have to work. They have to eat. So they're not on welfare. They're working, doing the best they can. Sometimes it just really sucks. Yeah. You had a psycho roommate. Those two, by the way. Yeah, the roommate issue, that too, not just renting rooms, but needing a roommate. People say to me, for example, why don't you, I looked at this really nice apartment in an area which I thought was really cool. This is before I moved here and to my house that I'm in now. But it was right next to the Silver Spring Metro. But it was quite expensive for a small place. It was over $2,000 a month, and I think that was for maybe just a bachelor. What do you call it? Bachelor apartment efficiency. So to get 2 rooms in there, I don't quite know what the price was, but it was not cheap. But it was right next to the Metro, and Silver Spring area is kind of cool. You got your Whole Foods, you got your movie theater, you got all these restaurants. You can walk to everything, there's parks and stuff, and then you can just jump on the Metro and go into DC. Great place. That's why it's expensive. But then, how do I get a roommate? And it seems like, there's got to be other nice ladies out there who would like to also rent and share a rental. But boy, when you start talking to them, you're like, and they just got out of a bad marriage, and their husband is violent, or they got drug issues, or they got this issue or that issues. Or they got a son who's a problem. It's very hard to find that person. If you actually find that really stable, nice roommate, you're lucky. And I had problems when I was 20 trying to get roommates too. Oh my God. So it's not an age thing. It's just a thing. I rented to foreign students afterward. Generally speaking, my Chinese students were the best renters I ever had. They were respectful of all the house rules, friendly, paid their rent on time. They were the best. So I hardly ever rented to Americans because they would cause trouble every single time I let them in the house. Interesting. So, yeah. Always get a recommendation when you can. Well, it's hard to get a recommendation sometimes because the person says, well, either they get a friend to give the fake recommendation or whatever. I mean, I did have one of my ex-renters, he called me up and said, look, I'm trying to get a new place to rent. I'd like you to give me a recommendation. I want to give them your name. I said, look, dude, you paid your rent on time. But other than that, you were an asshole. So I will tell them that. So maybe you shouldn't give my name. Jerk. Oh my God, such a jerk. Let's see what time we've got. Okay, a little bit of time. But that's just a super sad case. There was this one I was asked to talk about. Where is she? Here she is. We've had a number of these kind of cases where you have this young woman who disappears, and the thought is that somebody might have been after her. She was I'm going to call her Marilyn. I don't know how to pronounce it's I think a French name, so Bergeron, or something like that. I'll call her Marilyn. Okay, so Marilyn, she disappeared, and she left her family's home in Quebec City for what she said was a walk, and she never returned. They recorded her trying to get some money out of the teller machine. She was seen 5 hours later in a coffee shop, and they've had some supposed sighting of her, but they've never found her. The police think she committed suicide. The family's put up an reward, and they've never found her. And that was 2008. So where she went, nobody knows. But what's interesting is this. They think she might have met with foul play. Shortly before her disappearance, she had moved back to Quebec City from Montreal, where she told her parents, without being specific, that something had happened there and she no longer felt safe living on her own. However, she also, a friend said, in Montreal, said she had grown increasingly fearful and reclusive there in the last 2 months before her disappearance. He asked her if she'd been raped or witnessed a crime. She said what happened to her was, quote, worse than that, but refused to elaborate. Then she moves back to Quebec and is still acting very, like something's after her, somebody's after her and all this stuff. Now, mind you, she moved from Montreal to Quebec. And she won't tell anybody what the issue is. She won't go to the police. She won't tell anybody what the issue is. And this, to me, is another similar case of what I think is psychosis. Because as she went to her parents' house to be safe from Montreal to Quebec, that's a reasonable distance. So if she's having some issue with what's going on in town, unless that person absolutely knew where she lived in Quebec and followed her all the way to Quebec City, why would she be having problems in Quebec? Quebec City, not Quebec, sorry. Quebec City, let me get that straight. Because Montreal's in Quebec too. It's a territory. Okay, Quebec, Montreal is a city, Quebec City is a city. Okay, but enough distance between them that if somebody was bothering her in one place, they shouldn't be in the other place. Unless what could she have happening to her, seen? She said she alludes to things, but she never tells anybody anything. So what could be so secretive that she could A, not go to the police to get help, or B, at least tell her family or friend what's going on? So I believe that's psychosis. And I think she was still acting really strange and thinking, going out and looking over her shoulder a lot. And I think who knows what happened. It said here, during that week before she left, family said it was obvious something was deeply troubling her. And she asked her sister, is there a light at the end of this tunnel? What tunnel? We tried to get her to talk, but she would only cry. Then the mother confronted her daughter about what had happened in Montreal that so perturbed her she had to return home so quickly and leave her life there apparently for good. She denied her problems involved drugs, debts, or a relationship. Well, what's left? Aliens? I mean, I don't know. When she asked Marilyn if she'd been assaulted, Marilyn said nothing. Her face took on a pained expression. Well, she had been assaulted. Again, was she not reporting to police? And as she moved in with her family, did she really think somebody was going to come after her there? But she said she should talk to someone, suggest she talk to a psychologist, but she did not do that. So when she left their house, she told her parents she was going for a walk. She only took her credit card. She left all her other identification at home. She stopped at an ATM. She attempted to draw $60 and it was declined. Then the security footage released later shows her looking behind her several times during the encounter. She also had a black backpack slung over one shoulder. So she leaves her parents' house to go to an ATM and she's already looking over her shoulder. Yeah. Then she bought a cup of coffee about 12 miles south of her parents' house, 20 kilometers on the south side of the St. Lawrence River. She used a credit card. The clerk confirmed it was her, and she seemed depressed and eager to leave the store. No one's seen her since, nor has the credit card been used. So they've offered rewards and everything. Nobody has a clue what happened to him. And I don't know. I would assume the suicide is probably the most likely, that she was, I think she had some kind of mental issue. Because nothing else makes sense. A manic break, something like that, yeah. Sounds like she's paranoid schizophrenic, perhaps. And she wouldn't get help, which is unfortunate. Thank you. Quebec is a province and Quebec City is the capital city of Quebec. Thank you. It's like, what am I saying? I've been to Quebec City, by the way. I love Quebec City. Very, very pretty. Had a good time there. Well, I don't know if she had psychological issues in the past. There's no information on that I found. Thank you. A few hours away from Montreal. I thought it was at least that because, I drove with my husband and 3 kids up to Quebec City, and we stayed there. And I think if Montreal had been an hour away, we would have rolled over there to see Montreal as well. But 3 hours away, we didn't make it because we already had driven all the way from Washington, D.C. So, yeah, 3 hours away is a pretty long way away for somebody to be following her and, right away they're already there following her. It just doesn't make any sense to me at all. Why did they say it was suicide? Because she's just never been found. They don't. I don't think they believe there's foul play. They think she had mental issues. Could she have gone away someplace and just started a new life? Maybe. She took nothing with her except the credit card, which means she didn't have any money to speak of. No identification, and nobody's. There's a few sightings where people think they've seen her, but you know how those always happen. I think because it sounded like she was psychotic. I think that's probably why they're thinking it might be. She committed suicide somewhere, and that's why she's never been found again. Could she? Now, here's another possibility. Somebody can be psychotic and be acting really strangely and then go off into places, isolated places by themselves in some kind of state, and a serial killer could get them, grab them, rape and murder them, and bury them in their backyard. So, yeah, she could have come to foul play, but I think the foul play, if she came to any foul play, it would have been coincidental and not anything to do with what led up to her disappearance. So that would be my guess on that. Just always sad when somebody just vanishes like that and nobody knows what happened to them. Speaking of people vanishing, I think this will be my last one today. This young girl, she's 14 years old, lived in California. She disappears. And the family is trying to find her. And they claim that, this becomes a race issue again, that the police are not doing enough to find her daughter because she's Black. And if it were a kid who was white and she was 14 years old, they do more. It depends. And I've seen a lot of issues with this because I had a, what is she to me? This was my daughter's niece. I'm trying to remember how this works. But anyway, she was a young person. She was my niece. It's my sister-in-law's kid. Okay. Can't remember. It was my sister-in-law's daughter. She disappeared. Also Black. Also about that age. And my sister-in-law, I think, asked my daughter to look into it because she's a cop. So anyway, a detective. So the funny thing that often happens, is that the parent will say that their child would never run away. Their child would never leave willingly. And then what happens with the police departments is they get a lot of these kids, Black and white and every other color, it doesn't make any difference. They get these young kids who indeed don't come home or disappear from their home. And a lot of times they're pissed off at their parents and they go stay at their friend's house, or they're involved in drugs and they do some drugs and they don't come home, or they're out having sex with a boy someplace and then they don't show up till morning, or they just they stay away for days. And I think of my sister-in-law's daughter, she showed up again. I think it was like 5 days or something. And my daughter looked at her, she'd gotten on her Facebook account and all that stuff and read and said, yep, she's probably okay. But she didn't care that her mother was worried. She's like, I'm going to do what I want to do. And sometimes this is what kids are. So what happens with the police department is after they have parent after parent say, my kid would never run away. And the next day they go, oh, here they are. They did run away to their friend's house. And so you hear this so often. The question is, how soon do you jump in and do a full-fledged investigation to find a teenager? Now, usually if it's a child, 6, 8, 7, 8 years old, that's going to happen much quicker. But when it comes to teens, they have so many teens that simply just disappear from home, do whatever they feel like doing. So the police department only has so much manpower and money. So there's a question of how soon do they jump on this, and how. It also depends when they're talking to the parents. What are the parents saying that give them the feeling that maybe it's not what happened? Well, what happened in this case was the girl was online, unfortunately, with, let me find a story here, which is, again, why I tell you, got to watch out what your kids are doing online, because, this could happen to your kid too, or your grandchild too. Where is this kid? Where'd she go? Okay, yes, I am. Where did it go? Oh, there it is. Okay. She was from Sacramento. And what happened was, back in May 2024, the family of a 14-year-old Sacramento girl was in a panic after a sudden disappearance. They confirmed the girl has been found and safe. However, preliminary investigation reveals disturbing information about her vanishing. Okay, then we have the local activist comes out, and of course it's anti-police, and because she was Black, they didn't do much. And I don't know, could have been true in this instance. I do not know. The girl's mother accused the police of the time of not taking the child's disappearance seriously. And apparently the police supposedly said that she didn't fit the criteria, but what was the criteria based on? I don't know. So anyway, it took another 2 months for the California Highway Patrol issued an ebony alert, the first to come out of Sacramento County. But on April 10th, they finally got a big tip that led them to the girl all the way to Texas. Oh, come on, what the heck? I'm back. Come back. The page has vanished. So she's down in something's going wrong on my iPad again. I'm trying to figure out how to replace this iPad. I'm having a very hard time. Anyway, okay. I'll pull it up on my phone. Okay, so she's in Texas. They responded to a report of a suspicious person on the 100 block of Cold Snow Drive. The caller reported a male and female inside his vacant residence. Upon arrival, the two tried to flee but were detained. They then identified the female as the missing Sacramento girl who is now 15. However, the male was identified as a man almost twice her age, 28-year-old Tariq. And this is Tariq Xavier Jammer. The investigation so far into the disappearance revealed the two met through an online video game, and that's how they got to know each other. And they said he convinced the girl to run away with him. Deputies claimed the two formed a sexual dating relationship, despite the state law ruling 14 years old to be too young for this guy to be around, and that's considered rape. There's a real problem with the video game stuff, because kids who are on there playing video games around the clock. It's amazing how many times they meet somebody online. Adults too meet somebody online and get to feel close to them because they're playing the game together and chit-chatting and all that kind of stuff. He is arrested and booked into Harris County Jail for sexual performance of a child. Sexual performance? What the heck is that? What? This is the root. Somebody needs to, I've never heard of a sexual performance of a child. But anyway, may face more charges as the investigation continues. Kidnapping might be something useful. The teen was transferred to a facility to be reunited with her parents. Now, this guy deserves to be in prison, no question. But the parents are all angry that the child wasn't, the police didn't do more with finding their child. What I want to ask them is, why is your child, first of all, meeting guys online like this and willing to leave with them, run away from home, never leaving a mess, never leaving any note, never calling home? She just ran away and stayed away. Something's not great in that home. Sorry, guys. I can't imagine one of my kids having ever just left and never letting us know what happened. They would know what we would be in anguish trying to think of our child was dead. The child was had been kidnapped and was. I wonder what she took with her. Is the next thing I wonder about. Because did she take absolutely nothing with her? Or did she take a bag filled with stuff? So this is a story we're not getting, but I'm going to say there was a problem with the relationship between the parents and the child, for the child to simply go off with this guy and stay away that long without ever making a phone call. So, just saying. We got a lot of times there's this huge denial about what's going on in the home. So. And then maybe that could be cauliflower. I think sometimes these kids are such narcissists, probably raised by narcissists, though. And it can be that what they just don't have a lot, or psychopaths, because they just don't have any concern for their parents at all. Or maybe they've gotten to the point they don't care what their parents think because of whatever is going on in the home. I don't know. But there's got to be something wrong there, because that's just not normal. It happened. She couldn't rebuild, then be trapped by the guy. Rebullied. So theoretically, she could have run off with the guy, but over a year, she never had an opportunity to make a phone call, or maybe he could have kept her totally kidnapped, abducted, could have abducted her. We have to say, again, we don't have enough information. First of all, she did leave the house without leaving a note and stuff like that. I do wonder that she didn't take things with her, and the parents, that may be why the police didn't put out the bulletin. They're like, hey, look, she took clothing with her and jewelry. She left on her own, it seems. So maybe that's the reason they didn't jump on it. They're thinking, well, she's out with some friends, whatever. Maybe they talked to the different friends and around the area. We don't know what the police actually did. And if they had any particular reason to think they should put out a big a bola on her, it's like, maybe not a bola, maybe they didn't think that was what happened. Oh, I don't know what the parents told. So a lot of times we don't have this information. We jump to certain conclusions. But I will say that something was already wrong in that home. It's a shame. Well, that could be too. Parents are addicted to their smartphones and not paying attention. And a lot of parents have given up and allow their children pretty much to be on all the electronics nonstop and just to sit in their rooms and play games. And that was what the Adolescence movie was pointing out, that the parents seemed to be nice people. And the sister turned out fine. But the boy was in his room playing video games nonstop. And they kind of just shrugged their shoulders and said, well, that's kids today. So when we don't have that, that's what the pastor just said on a thing about Karmelo. That's what the pastor said. That the parents, we're missing parents. We're missing the proper people that children need around them to guide them and to raise them up properly. Their parents are either not in the home, or one of them is not in the home, that they're left alone a lot, or they're allowed free reign, or they can do whatever they want. And they're not going to church. They're not involved in proper healthy things to be involved in. The school system's falling apart. That's what adolescents showed too. School systems aren't managing things well either. So behavior has gone off the charts bad. And until the parents themselves and the communities decide enough is enough, that's a problem. And in DC right now, we're, I think, the fourth most violent city in the United States. I just read an article on that. And a lot of it was young men killing young men. And so why is that? What's going on? Yeah, it's very sad. So anyway, yeah. All right. Now I think I'm going to call it a night. So thank you guys for being here. I will be back on Sunday for the case show, which I haven't decided on yet. She got at least another day to needle me some more. I asked you to do this 5 times and you haven't done it yet. Yeah, feel free to needle me some more because I got to make up my mind sometime during tomorrow. So you still have a chance. Eventually, I sometimes get to things, but it takes me 6 months because there's so many cases and it has to appeal to me at the time for me to go ahead and do it. And so anyway, thank you guys for being here. Oh, thank you, Frida. Thank you, Lex. Thank you, Lisa. Oh, that's Caitlin and Lisa and Molly. I'm glad you were all here. And I know some of you had to go to sleep because you were not on this side of the pond. So anyway, guys, I will see you hopefully on a Sunday, for some of you at least, to be here. And what in the heck? Oh, sorry. Clicked on something wrong. See you soon. Bye.